Hey, everybody, welcome to the Blacklist, the show where we interview the elite. On my right, we have Lee, who we're going to talk about his story, we're going to talk about what he does, and all of that good stuff. But for people that don't know you, right, this is their first time listening in, first time seeing you ever. Who is Lee and what is it that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Lee Cholodenko, and I consider myself a consultant, but also an advisor. And really, my I see my job as to raise consciousness in
Yeah.
individuals and in business. And so I do that through consulting, through leadership development, through trainings.
So
Yeah,
walk me through that.
yeah,
How do you lead people towards that, number one? Because that sounds
yeah.
like a hefty task.
Yes, it is.
And two, like, who are the type of people that you end up working with?
Sure. So yeah, it's a great question, right? Like, how do we do that, right? Because we also hear that word a lot, right? Consciousness is thrown
Right.
around a lot. So how do you actually raise consciousness, right, in an organization? And the reason we want to do that is because we believe that conscious business does good things for the environment. It does good things for ourselves, for the people that work in our companies.
Yeah.
Um, so really, my path actually started in personal development, and then I moved in the business world. And what I found is that actually the quickest and fastest way to raise consciousness is to better understand yourself,
Yeah.
to have some level of self-awareness, right? To actually do some kind of inner work such that you really understand who you are. You can kind of move through some of your, challenges and some of the limited thinking that you have to be able to kind of unlock your own potential.
Yeah.
And when you can do that for yourself, right, then you can kind of support and create an opportunity container where other people can do that for themselves as well.
So for people that are, like in grind time, right, when they're
Yeah.
working constantly in their business, and a lot of things are always constantly moving.
hmm
How do you get people to kind of stop, slow down, be aware,
Yeah.
and actually work on themselves?
Yeah. It's a great question, right? Because a lot of us are in grind all the
Yeah,
time. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been a practice, right? And so what I work with clients is that I say, it takes time to develop a practice, right? And so sometimes when we're on the front lines, it's hard for us to really develop the kind of conscious and awareness to actually that is needed to really be able to kind of weather those storms
yeah,
and kind of get through those battles. And so sometimes we have to retreat a little bit, right? We have to take a step back. We have to say, okay, somehow, in some way, I know I'm busy. I may have 100 jobs. I may have 10 kids. I may have, whatever's going on. I need to find a way to create some time for me. I need to find some way to better understand myself, to create some time where I can actually like get in touch with really what's going on. What is the nature of my mental experience? What's the nature of my emotional experience, right?
yeah.
And especially as business leaders, it's really hard to do that. So like, the people that I end up working with are having a hard time even finding some of that time. So really the work kind of starts with being like, how do we actually create some of that time
Yeah.
and some of that space? And then once you actually have that time, what does the practice look like?
Exactly, because a lot of people can do a lot of nothing.
Right.
Like they feel like they're doing the work, but maybe they just don't know the right strategies, or
Right.
they might not know what to do.
Right.
So that's true. It's not just finding the right time, but it's like, okay, once you have it, you need to make sure you're doing the right things. Right?
Exactly.
What are the right
Yeah.
things?
That's a really tough question because there really are no like right and wrong things. But the things that have worked for me in my own experience,
Yeah.
one is meditation, right? So having a meditation practice where, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just taking time to really get in touch with what's going on inside. And it doesn't mean that I necessarily need to go off into the astral plane and, start to like, go in to do some kind of transcendental stuff. It just
Yeah.
means like, can I slow down enough to become aware of what's going on for me right now?
Yeah.
To know what's going on in my heart, my mind. And that is, is kind of a place to start. So that's one.
Yeah.
The other thing is really just kind of that simple awareness, right? So even just sitting here, it's like, okay, how does my body feel, right? How are the emotions? How's the mind,
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be in meditation, right? But the meditation builds the practice to
Yeah.
be able to actually do that, when we're not in meditation.
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah,
because I've tried meditation a couple times,
yeah,
and this is what happens for me, and then you can tell me if I'm doing something wrong, but like when I'm doing meditation, I literally have like thousands of thoughts in my head,
mhm,
and it just allows me to kind of continue to think, but I don't think
mhm,
about like, okay, how I'm feeling or anything like that.
mhm.
It just kind of gives me quiet time to think about business or this or that. Like, am I focusing on the wrong things? Am I not being with myself long enough? Like, what, because I'm sure if I experience that, people might also
Absolutely,
experience that.
absolutely. So is it just that the mind is racing? You have a bunch
Yeah,
of
it
thoughts about
continues to
business.
race, and it's not. I don't
Yeah,
think I'm thinking about myself. Like, I'm thinking about
hmm
how to grow this or how to do that. Like,
hmm yeah.
yeah.
I'd say there's no problem with that. I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes meditation is just the intention. It's just to sit down
Mm.
and just stop for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
And to say, okay, so now my mind, so maybe, meditation is really just becoming aware, right? So, wow,
Sure.
my mind's racing right now.
Yeah.
And then every second, if we can say, okay, my mind's racing right now, my mind's racing right now. But I find that over time, all of a sudden we become aware of the person witnessing the mind racing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So we
Mhm.
become aware of that and we say, wait a minute, there's some witness here. There's some like something that's not the thoughts themselves
Yeah.
that's witnessing all this happen. And that becomes interesting. And then we start to ask, like, well, who is that? What part of that
Exactly.
is, of me is that?
And I feel like I've had that happen when I do slow down. Like
Yeah.
when I'm aware, super consciously aware, that is when I feel like you said, you get to slow down, you get to see everything for what it is.
Yeah.
And if I had to describe it like an analogy, it's like it might be a bad analogy, but like have you watched the movie The Matrix, like with
Yeah.
Neo and
Yeah.
stuff
I
like
love the
that? So
movie.
it's like the moment the bullets are coming in, they're slow, you can see everything very clear.
Right.
It's like that's how I feel when I get into that state. It's just
Yeah.
very hard for me to
To
get
get
into
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think that's normal. I mean, and I think it's like that's what the practice is about. Over time we say, okay, wait a minute, I'm able to get into that a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes time,
And in a leadership position,
Yeah.
right? Because you obviously do this for clients.
Right.
How does the transformation look like in a business sense?
Great question. So a lot of the times what we do is we do leadership development training. So really what that means is that we go into organizations and we help develop strategic thinking.
Yeah.
So what that means, we really develop leadership capacity, which in many ways means helping leaders understand themselves, getting to know who they are, creating that space where they can learn new practices like meditation and other things. And, from there, we start to see that transformation kind of happens on its own,
Yeah.
And so that's one side of it, right? Is on the personal side. Obviously, we do strategy training as well, which is a little more tactical, a little more practical, like how to understand strategy, create vision, create like we call the rules of the game, right? Or the context
Yeah.
in which the business plays out. But on the personal side, it's like before you can even approach strategy and to know how to implement strategy, you have to know how your own mind works. Because anytime we approach strategy, anytime we're as leaders, we come to the table, we're bringing a set of mental models, we're bringing our own beliefs, we're bringing our own set of dispositions. And so without becoming aware of those in some way, then what we're doing becomes a little bit
Yeah.
kind of skewed and what we call kind of unconscious. And really that's what consciousness means, right? It's just awareness.
Yeah.
So can I become aware of how I approach strategy, right? And when we do that, we find that the leadership capacities really grow within the individual. And as they do that, the company sees enormous transformation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said something that's very that hits home for me right now. You said
Yeah.
something like when you work with them, you help develop the strategy, but you also help develop vision, or
Yeah.
you help them kind of develop the vision. How does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. So what we find is that, one of the things that is so critical to leadership is having a clear vision, right? So everyone
100%.
needs to know where you're going, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, right? So
Yeah.
vision is also connected to purpose. Why do we exist as an
Yeah.
organization, right? To really answer that question, you also kind of have to know for your oneself, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like it's totally inauthentic if it's something that you can't connect to on any way as a leader individually, and then obviously the rest of the company is going to have a hard time latching on. So really, by setting the focus, the question that we ask, series of questions that we ask, right? And sometimes it's a little introspective, sometimes it's more strategic, but it's like, why do we exist as an organization? And then, can we set a game plan, right? How do we actually move towards our vision, right? And really, the vision is kind of a combination of the goals, the purpose, and ultimately the place that the business wants to end up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling with that right now.
Okay.
I'm struggling not with the vision, but with like communicating the vision
Yeah.
constantly. And I've been learning that as a CEO, like that's like priority number one. Like
Yeah.
you have to constantly be,
Yes.
incorporating the vision with everything, so that way everybody feels included in what they're doing. So that way, and for me that's a little bit difficult because I feel like, well, I know where we're going, like I know
Yeah.
what we're doing, but maybe other people don't. So,
Mhm.
how can someone like me that's struggling with that either develop a better sense of like doing it on a daily basis, or how can I do it? How can I do more of it to the point where other people understand and feel it as well?
Yeah, that's great. So that's actually one of the things that we work on with clients, and it actually becomes one of the most complex aspects of the work that we do.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because it's one thing to have a vision, it's another thing to communicate it, right?
Yeah.
Another way to communicate it where people can receive it and really make it a part of, can kind of own it and embody it.
So they feel like they're a part of it too,
Yes.
and they don't feel like it's just a job.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so what I would say too is, just obviously it can be a deeper conversation, but just, on the high level, and also for anyone kind of listening who's going through that same challenge, really it's like making sure that the vision really embodies the purpose, like, right? And one of the questions that we ask
what's
is
the
like,
difference?
between a vision and purpose?
Yeah,
It's a good question. I say that the vision is kind of like the direction that the business wants to go. It's kind of like where they want to see it going. And the purpose is why we exist. It's a little bit on a
Okay.
higher level. It's kind of
Yeah.
like why we all wake up, right? And the vision's kind of like, okay, we're going this direction, right? But it's kind of held by the purpose. And so what I would say is like anytime that someone's creating a vision, it's like, what is the purpose, and clarifying that first. And then the second thing is make it ownable by others, right?
and
It's
how
like,
do you do that?
so, really one way is to make it specific enough, but broad enough. And also to really also think about the people that are in your organization. You know what I mean? Like when you just kind of feel into them and sense them, like what kind of gets them up in
Yeah.
the morning, right?
Yeah.
And kind of what is it also that they expect when they come into work, right? And also, that's kind of why this goes back to always to leadership and to the leaders, right? Because if you're leading with your heart and your vision and your purpose, it's actually easier for someone else to kind of find a way. So it's kind of like that dual thing of, right, kind of making sure that you like your own personal vision is really in that.
Yeah.
And then also making sure that it's ownable by being kind of broad enough where you're not just making it about it's not the me show,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
No, that makes a lot of
It's
sense.
a complex question, which if I could answer if we had more time, but that's the high
No,
level.
yeah. No, that's powerful, dude. Because
Yeah.
I think it's a common issue, and
Yeah.
I think once you start developing a leadership team and
Mhm.
having that, it becomes even more important because
Yes.
they kind of lead everything else.
Exactly.
So that's super. So if somebody was to like work with you, do you have?
Yeah.
Is it group? Is it one-on-one? Is it like a package? How does that look
Yeah,
like?
we do both. So we do leadership development training. So we come into organization, we work with senior leaders in organizations, and we do a lot of the personal what we call self mastery work, which is really that self understanding leadership capacity. We also do strategic thinking. We do strategy development,
Yeah.
and then also with select clients, we do one on one, and we kind of like become kind of like sparring partners with the CEO
Right,
and
right.
owners on the higher level.
Who's like the ideal avatar for you? Do they have to make X amount yearly? Do they have to have a leadership team?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think kind of, medium-sized companies are the ones that we work best with because the
Yeah.
company's kind of large enough where there is kind of like the leadership teams. There are, it's kind of different, subdivisions of the company, or there's different, sometimes even business units. But the company, yeah, I would say between small and medium-sized organizations, and also leaders who have a desire to grow, who
Right,
have a
right.
desire on the personal level to grow, and also have a desire to kind of elevate their business, right? And to kind of really reach their capacity. And there's not every leader that really wants to do that. So we kind of look for kind of the
Yeah.
intangibles when we meet with someone.
And how does someone look for someone like you?
Yeah. So you can find us in two places. So, it's my own website, leecholodenko.com, and
Yeah.
also the Kollner Group, which is the consulting firm that I'm the executive director of. The company's been around for about 30 years. Yeah, you can find us there.
But if somebody was like interested and like, what do they type in Google to like find
Yeah,
your
to find
expertise?
this. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's really, we are leadership development, but what we're doing is we're kind of what we
It's kind of
what we
like
say
a
is like
spin,
on the
though.
new. It's like kind of on the it's the new edge. It's basically saying if you want to create change in the collective, you change it within yourself.
Right.
And so what we're saying is we can work on the collective level with you. We can do that, right? We can do strategy work, we can do all that stuff, but ultimately that work also comes down to you doing it on yourself as well. And so we become kind of like it's that blending of consulting and coaching, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in my mind,
Yeah.
when you say leadership,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but like that term is so broad.
Yes.
There's so many people that do leadership in some capacity.
Right.
But like for this, it's like it's very it's very niche based. Like
Mhm.
I see the ROI in that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when people are looking it up, I don't know, they might not, leadership in general might not be like an ROI type of thing that I think people think about. But like your type of thing is definitely more niche based towards that. And I think so
Yeah.
it's like a subdivision of
Like leadership. Yeah, I'd say that too. And really where we kind of draw our expertise is in strategy. And the way that we kind of came about this is also via strategy by saying like, wow, when we're working with leaders, we saw it is really, people don't also understand strategy.
Yeah,
They don't
yeah.
even know what it means. The word is so broad and it's so vague that when you actually talk about it, people are like, hey, I don't really know what it is. And if they do have a sense of what it is, it's hard to implement
Yeah.
because they actually don't have the kind of, I guess the self-awareness and the self-understanding to actually know that actually how you approach it is how you're going to implement it.
Yeah.
So then we
yeah.
found is that all these companies were failing and it didn't have to do with their strategy. It had to do with their leaders. And so then we came back to say, okay, this is actually a leadership issue, right? So yeah, you're right. We're kind of on that fence, but what sets us apart is that we really are strategy experts
Yeah.
and we are leadership experts. And so that's where we find the intersection.
Yeah. No, that's powerful, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you could leave off,
Yeah.
like, let's say, there's people right now that are listening
Yeah.
in and they're super interested and they want to take something home today because they want to be able to like, start implementing it right away with their leadership team. What's one piece of advice that you could give them?
Yeah, good question. So I would say the first thing, I know I sound like a broken record, but if you really want to bring team development to your organization, you bring it to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what, that's kind of the message. And if you want to do that, one thing to do today is if meditation is not your thing, start doing some practice where you start becoming aware of what's going on inside of you in any given moment, whether it's your thoughts, whether it's your emotions, figuring out some way to do that. And some people, I have a buddy who loves to fish, and he said, he's like, I hate meditation, but then he tells me about fishing all the time and he's in the river and he's like quiet and he can hear nature and he can hear himself and he hears thoughts. I'm like, my God, you are meditating.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So So anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's meditation or not, but just going on the inner journey. Like start looking within that. Seems a little bit broad, but it can be meditation, it can be journaling, it can also just be understanding, taking a little bit of time in silence, go on a nature walk, and really just bring your attention inside. And as you do, start to see what comes up for you, and that's really the beginning of the journey, right? And then from there, you're on your path towards what we call conscious business leadership, which is, I think where we're all moving in this world.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, powerful message, powerful conversation. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So they can find me at leecholodenko.com, just my name.com. You can also find me at the Kollner Group, KOLLNER group.com. And we hope to connect.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.